I'd like to use this big spectrum of thoughts and assessments of generative AI to launch into our panel discussion. And I'd really like to turn to Keith Strier first. And Keith, to get your thoughts on this topic. Where in this spectrum are we, and how could we handle that? Over to you, Keith.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Sebastian. And Hiroki, thank you for that great presentation. You stole my thinking in a bunch of areas, and I'm now going to have to repeat because there was such a comprehensive, good talk. It's interesting because in society, we regulate everything from breakfast cereal to transportation systems, right? We set standards for how things are designed. We hold people accountable how things are used. Particularly for cars, there are rules, regulations, and standards for what goes into cars and what comes out of them. There are rules not only for how they're designed, but also for how they're used by consumers, right? Not just how fast you drive or how well you drive, but also just putting on a seatbelt to protect yourself, right? There's lots of rules, there's lots of standards, and those have emerged over the years. For those of us that were grew up in the 70s, we didn't really wear seatbelts, right? Then suddenly in the 80s, you had to wear a seatbelt, right? It was a thing. There were no airbags in the 70s, and by the 90s, all cars had airbags. So these standards evolve as we learn how to do things better. And frankly, driving has become even more dangerous in the last 10 years. It seemed like I remember growing up, drunk driving was the thing, and that was one of the big dangers. And we went through sort of a peak period, then that went down, and now it's distracted driving, and it's people texting while they drive, and that's the big risk now, right? So the risks change and so forth, but there's no question that we regulate and we set standards, and we keep pursuing and identifying the new risks. So I think it's without a question that we're going to need to do that with advanced systems like AI. Right, that I don't think there's any question about that. I think the question really is just, what's the shape of those regulations? We'll never know. There's all those unknown unknowns. We won't know all the risks today, just like no one contemplated distracted driving by texting 80 years ago when cars were, so risks will continue to change, but the need to keep identifying them, move very, very quickly to identify those, regulate, definitely doesn't change. We are faced with that tremendous risk, but we're also faced with this incredible opportunity for value creation and benefits to society. And so I think that there is a particularly heavy burden on governments not to just regulate, but to also protect and incentivize this innovation because of the good. And Hiroki very rightfully pointed out towards the end of his presentation some of those benefits. I actually wanted to tap into at least one of them. He sort of featured the AlphaFold protein example, and I was listening to an interview about that specific use case recently, and just to put some very specific numbers to that so people understand what's at stake, not just on the risk side, but on the benefit side. So, it has for many years, the pursuing and the ability to identify the structure of proteins is foundational to science. And on average, it takes a single human, a PhD, about 5 years to do that. You do your entire thesis, you write your PhD about a protein. That's been sort of a standard cycle, right? And so if it takes a person 5 years to identify the structure of a protein, and Google, through its innovation, has been able to solve this problem, and now we have the structure of protein. We have 200 million proteins essentially mapped out. That is an activity that would have taken humanity 1 billion years, right? 1 billion years. So just try to get your hands around that, right? 1 billion years. So we've taken 1 billion years of scientific discovery and we've squeezed it into a year, right? And so now let's think, we can spend the rest of the week just talking about how that's going to benefit humanity and the incredible things that'll flow from that. So when we talk about a pause to this innovation, it's very easy to just get pulled into just the risks, both the real pragmatic risks like deepfakes, as well as the existential risks of, what if this AI gets out of control? So you can get very caught up in that, but then you lose sight of the existential benefits and the incredible wave of innovation that's going to affect society in all those ways. And you have to be careful not to do that. So when I see a pause, a recommendation for a pause. I think that's as or more dangerous than, frankly, from my perspective. And I see it's dangerous for 3 reasons. I think it's dangerous, one, because the most important thing we can do for these systems is make them more reliable. We can make them more trusted. And the only way you can make them more reliable, more trusted, is if you invest in them and you keep doing the research. And that's number one. It's dangerous to pause because there are all of these other use cases that are adversarial and malicious. And they're not going to pause. So we want to make sure the bad actors and the humans that will use these AI systems, and of course, that's the real risk here, right? It's not AI, it's the humans that use them. We don't want them to continue to innovate in down dark corridors. So we need to make sure that we're doing what we can do on the right side of this equation. And then finally, as I said, it's dangerous because of the waves of benefits that we're going to be preventing society from having. And that the untold benefits, right, that we don't know about, in addition to things that we do know about. So I think that's the danger here. But I also agree with the poll question, right? Does policymaking need to move faster? Yeah, that's always been a challenge. Technology advances is advancing super exponentially now, and that is very complicated. That's a challenge for policy making. Doesn't tend to work super exponentially for good reason, right? So I think I don't know an easy answer to that one, but I do believe that the forums like this one, conversations like this, are amazing, are fantastic, and are useful, and are happening all across the world. Many of us remotely and in this room are operating in multiple similar conversations and forums. I'll be having dinner tonight with the Director General of the Paris Peace Forum, talking largely about this topic. I'll be having lunch with the Secretary General of the Commonwealth of Nations, the Right Honorable Patricia Scotland, largely talking about these topics. So this is happening across the world in every region, all the time, all at once, and I think that's really encouraging for us, right? So I don't think anyone's hiding from the conversation, and I think that's really good news. So thank you for having the conversation. Thanks for bringing everyone together, and I'll hand the mic back to you, Sebastian.